It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. It's a little dry in the house from all the heat running, and so my voice is a little scratchy and maybe a little deeper than normal, which I kind of dig, just so you know. Not that you care, but just so you know. Today's show, I think we're on 372. We are going to have an interview with Drew. His YouTube channel is Genetically Modified Skeptic. Excellent content on his YouTube channel. And of course, a wonderful interview. So, Drew, thank you for your time. And I know you will all love that a little later on. The Investing Skeptically segment for today is called How to Unfuck Your Portfolio. And this is meant for people that at some point maybe got a little itchy or a little scared or a little panicky and sold a whole bunch of stuff, and now they've sat on the sidelines for 9 months, 10 years, whatever, watching the market go up, and some ideas on what one could possibly do to get yourself out of the dilemma. Because if you sold last year after the market fell, and now it not only regained the 30%, but ended up 18.4% on the year overall, you could have seen your portfolio recover by 30, 40, 50%, but now you're in cash. So what do? That's what this upcoming episode is all about. It also applies to somebody that might have one specific stock that has done phenomenally well. If you have one of those stocks and it's starting to take over your portfolio, some of the ideas in that segment may actually help you figure out how to unwind that. My general advice is no more than 5% of your portfolio should be in any one specific stock. I don't mean one share. I mean one company like Apple or Microsoft or Tesla. If more than 5% of your portfolio is any one specific stock, name, company, whatever you want to call it, you might want to consider reducing that. We know from history that sometimes companies that are the biggest winners are the biggest winners the next year, and the next year, and the next year, until they're not. Famous companies like Xerox, General Electric, big oil companies that are now losing revenue because other forms of energy are becoming more popular. Things change. Things aren't always the same, and sometimes it's really hard to predict, to know, to even contemplate which one of the things is going to be the way to go. So that's a little bit about the segment, How to Unfuck Your Portfolio. Other fun notes, just kind of some random stuff here. My solar panels. It turns out solar panels can work fairly well with several inches of snow on them. 3-4 inches maybe. If it's a foot, not so much. Also, if the snow comes off those solar panels and the day is dark and dreary and cloudy and stormy, that probably blocks the sun better than even a couple inches of snow. For me, it's been nice because most of the times the snow has either slid off on a potentially dangerous avalanche type situation, or the last snow that we had, even though it was 9 inches, a day later, my panels were virtually snow-free because there was high wind and it was lighter, fluffier. I call it dry snow, but yes, I understand that it's 100% water. Well, it's mostly water with some chemicals and other impurities, but you get the idea. Dry snow, non-sticky snow, not wet, heavy snow. And if you live in Arizona, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but that's okay. But the solar panels keep on kicking. It seems like the two single biggest factors are the angle of the sun, elevation, altitude. Altitude is not altitude. Declination, I think is the right word. How high the sun is in the sky, and the higher, the better. Of course, heavy clouds, summer or winter, are going to block a whole lot of the sun's rays, and you're not going to get much on either season. The other thing that's very interesting, my panels face east and west, not the optimal south. But it also creates an interesting situation because when your panels face only south, your peak energy production is higher, but during a much shorter period of time. Because mine face east and west, the energy curve shape thingy that I get with the app shows that I get not as high a peak at midday, at peak sun, but a lower peak that lasts a longer period of time. So I'm less subject to, a couple of big clouds coming through right at noon and costing me a whole bunch of power because I'm not collecting it all at one time. But my understanding is that the east-west scenario I will collect on an annualized basis 10 to 15% less energy, but I knew that going in. Another thing, I am going to work on bonds, Bonds 101, or Investing 101 - bonds as an upcoming segment. So if there's some other topic that you think might be good for everybody to hear, something on from a entry level, basic idea. Sometimes I talk about really complex things and what to do with more than $1 million. But sometimes it's really basic stuff. What is a stock? We did that last episode, which leads me to the following subject to discuss here briefly. And part of the reason I did that segment is a lot of people don't seem to really get what a stock is. And I've done this for 25 years and started learning about how markets work before I was 20, and now I'm over 50. So more than 30 years trying to learn and figure out how things work. I don't expect everyone to know what I know. That's totally fine. Matter of fact, I really generally enjoy helping people learn about how things work. And a few of my clients had heard me over the last couple shows and could perceive that I was like really kind of in a funk. Because while I expect people to not know as much as I do, because it's my living, right? Just like if your living is growing plants, I would clearly not know shit compared to what you know about how to grow plants, like in a garden or wherever. But what really did catch me by surprise was the people that had obvious ignorance on the subject, not only stating their claims, but fighting vigorously for something that they said that is confoundingly wrong and misinformed. And a couple of times people said, well, I read that on Reddit. Okay. Reddit. On Reddit, there are geniuses. No doubt about it. Just from random chance. There's some really freaking smart people on there. And if you go and learn or try to learn from Reddit about how to invest, you can actually find people that know what they're talking about. Just the odds tell me that. There's got to be really smart people talking. But the problem is that if you don't know anything about anything, how do you know which person is giving that good information and which person is giving you bullshit? Information that is counterproductive. So I'm going to give you 4 book ideas, 4 book suggestions. I do strongly recommend that you read them in order. The first book is A Random Walk Down Wall Street. And I warn everybody, it is not woke. It is a 100-year-old book. There may be contents and phrasings and the way it talks about different types of people that aren't correct in our more sophisticated, more advanced social norms. So just prepare yourself for that. Also, even though it's a short book, in the middle, it does get a little repetitive and boring, but that's okay. Go through it and get to the end. There's some more good stuff. And The Richest Man in Babylon is so old that it's out of copyright. So the book costs like $3 or $4. You might pay $1 or $2 for a Kindle version. Last I checked, there was even a free version where someone read the book out loud on YouTube. The second book is A Random Walk Down Wall Street. And you will notice from all 4 of my book recommendations, none of these are brand new. I have had authors on that have made fantastically good books in the last several years. But this is like foundational work, stuff you need to know and understand to be able to proceed and even understand these newer books. A Random Walk Down Wall Street will give you a lot of the vocabulary. This is a stock. This is a bond. This is how they work. This is a mutual fund. This is an open-end versus a closed-end mutual funds. Why their prices go up. How the prices are calculated. A lot of stuff that maybe you didn't even know you needed to know. Stuff you didn't even know you wanted to know. And you don't have to memorize all of it. Just read it. Take your time. It's not a Harry Potter novel. It's not something you want to get through in 2 or 3 hours. Take your time. Learn some things. That book, every couple of years, I go back and I reread again. Actually, I have the audiobook, so it's reread to me again. The third book is Winning the Loser's Game. And I think like The Random Walk Down Wall Street is either late 60s, early 70s. And both of these books have been revised multiple times. The older versions are pretty good. But, one of the more recent versions from the last 3 to 5 years, whatever the most recent version is. The nice thing about Winning the Loser's Game, it talks about how you are going to have a hard time beating the market because you're just you. And with some rare exceptions, almost nobody that listens to this show has over $10 million, has connections and ways to invest that all of us don't. So for almost everybody listening to the show, including myself, we have to invest in the market and the system that we have. And winning the loser's game talks a lot about that. The fourth book, which is actually the newest of the batch, and the one that I insist that you have either in paperback or hardback. You can do the audiobook. You can do it on Kindle. My experience has been on Kindle that it doesn't work right, showing the graphs and everything on the same page. Maybe viewing it on a computer, it works, but on a phone or a tablet, I've not been impressed. But I also want you to have it in paper because you should treat it like a textbook. Now, I do have the audiobook version and the hardback version and the Kindle version for myself, and it's something that I go back to time and time again to get show topic ideas, or I have something in my head that I think, well, is that really true? I want to go check. So the authors of these books can pull up information from actual scientific studies performed by professors and people with doctorates at universities that study investing, that study finance. And one of the biggest problems with our system is those people that know the numbers, the statistics, they aren't salespeople. They don't really want to be salespeople. They just want to go do some more research. And often the people that are salespeople that are trying to talk you into something don't understand or know the data. You don't generally have access to the data. It's almost always behind a paywall. And so the single best way to kind of understand that data and have a professional interpret and explain that data to you are these books that I've recommended. Of course, there are other fantastic books, but it helps to know that somebody that you're reading or an author who wrote a book is someone who is an expert in that field. And a lot of times we have this bias against experts in our society that fucking drives me crazy. The other thing that I've noticed, I've received several emails and everyone has been so nice. Thank you. I do greatly appreciate that. A couple of emails about Investing 101 stocks, which I did, where there seems to be this idea that if a stock doesn't pay a dividend, then it's no better than a tulip bulb or Bitcoin. I have failed you. If you listen to the show and you think that a stock that pays no dividends may have a $0 value because it does not pay dividends, somehow I have failed you. And I don't know how to fix it, but I'm going to try. I'm going to work on it and see what I can include in future episodes. And I came up with an example that I wrote to one of these very kind emailers, and it kind of goes like this. If you started your own company and you sold $100,000 in stock, let's just say it's $1 per share, and you sell 100,000 of them for $1 a piece. And of course, I'm going to ignore the technicalities and the realities of what it costs to actually issue stock because that's not really relevant. But you sell 100,000 shares at $1 a piece. Your company, your brand new company, now has $100,000. It buys a building. It buys a building that it can then rent out to other people who want space in that building. And at the end of the year, your company makes $10,000 in profit. After taxes, all that crap, there's actually $10,000 left extra in the company's bank account. Now, it could choose, this company that you own, you could choose, your board of directors could choose to give out some kind of dividend. It might be 2 cents on the dollar. It could be 4 cents. It could be 0. Often companies will not have dividends, particularly if their goal is to grow faster. And that can be a really wise choice if they're able to find something to do with that money. And let's say they make $10,000 a profit a year, and after 10 years, they buy a second building. And so now your company owns 2 buildings for a combined real estate value of $200,000, and you still pay no dividends, and you expect to never pay dividends. What is that stock worth now? It's clearly not $1, in my opinion, because if nothing else, you have assets that suggest that the stock price should be at least $2. However, you might think, well, if they've grown from 100,000 to 200,000 in 10 years, they might be able to grow from 200,000 to 400,000 in another 10 years, and you might be willing to buy shares of that stock for $2.10 or $2.20 or $2.50, with the expectation that if they continue down this road, that eventually the stock will be worth $4 or $5 because this company, the one that you own that bought some buildings, has actual tangible assets. So even if the company can no longer pay its bills and files for bankruptcy, they could sell the buildings and you would at least cover part, if not the generous share of or most of your stock. So your loss is limited because the company owns things, has assets. It might be buildings, it might be a truck, it might be patents, copyrights. Those things have tangible, actual values. And this is something that a tulip bulb does not have. It can grow you a flower. That's what a tulip bulb does. It cannot create wealth. Same reason I have issues with something like cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency might be an efficient way of exchanging value between one person and another person, but it does not in and of itself create wealth. So to me, it's not investing. Anyway, I digress. So the idea that a company that does not pay a dividend, that plans on never paying a dividend, has zero value is absolutely wrong. Its value can be determined based on what it owns and or what it can make going forward. And of course, the price, different people look at different things and assign values to them. Someone might think that $2.20 is too high and therefore they don't want to buy it. Or if they have shares, they could sell them. Everybody comes to different conclusions, and real companies, unlike my example, are wildly more complicated and very, very difficult to evaluate. Yes, sometimes people buy stock in something because it's hot and it's trendy, and the price can go for way more than it probably should. There's also times where a company is out of favor and the price can sell below what the tangible assets are that are owned by the company. And so there is a little bit of that uncertainty in the stock price of a specific stock on a specific day. But it tends to all work itself out in the long run. And that's where I think stock investing wins and why it has won and why it will continue to win. Because in the end, you get pretty close to the right price, but there's a lot of fluctuation in between, which freaks people out. And that's why a lot of people want to avoid it. Anyway, just some opening thoughts. We're going to take a little break and listen to how to unfuck your portfolio. And after that, an interview with Drew, Genetically Modified Skeptic, and we'll talk about him and his YouTube channel. So hang in there.
We do not accept that there is a God or gods, personal or in nature, manifesting himself, herself, itself, or themselves in any way. We do not accept the idea of heaven, hell, perdition, purgatory, or any other of the stages reached by escalator going either up or down. We do not accept that there is any life after death. We do not accept miracles. We do not accept the idea of angels, spooks, goblins, gremlins, leprechauns, elves, or souls. We simply do not accept that anyone at any time was ever a prophet of God who did not exist or which did not exist. We do not accept any so-called holy books as guides to life, and that includes the Bible, the Torah, the Veda, the Koran, the Upanishads, the Awaspi, they invent them constantly. We don't care whether that book was written by anyone in history, in any age in history, whether that was written by Moses, Mary Baker Eddy, Paul, Joseph Smith, Mohammed, Gautama Buddha, or the fickle finger of fate.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
How to fix a broken portfolio. I just had an email and I wrote a response to that listener. Thank you for giving me this wonderful idea. It's something that I don't think I've covered in far too long. So we're going to do it now. How to fix a broken portfolio. And what I mean is that for whatever reason, your portfolio right now is not the way it should be. It could have all stocks and you're just a year or two from retirement. That's one thing. And that seems to be an easier fix today in early 2021, because even if you screwed it up and you let the stocks get too big, you've won. Congratulations. You did fantastic. That's easy to fix. The harder thing to fix is that if in 2008 or when Trump got elected or when COVID first hit in March, April of 2020, that you panicked, you flinched, or some other date, and you went to 80, 90, 100% bonds because you were terrified the world was going to implode, and now you've been sucking it. You've made 1 or 2% or 4 or 5% when the market went up 18.4. Or worse, you missed 18.4 last year and 30 the year before that. Of course, that's just the stock market part. A nicely balanced portfolio, especially if you're close to retirement, will have international real estate and bonds, and you didn't make 18.4 last year. You might have made 14 or 15 or 16, and that's okay. We want to have a reasonably good return, and we want to have the best performance with minimal volatility in the long run. So it's kind of a seesaw, balance thing, trade-off. But anyway, if you did something like that and you panicked, and now you realize that you shouldn't have sold, and you look back at all that you've missed, and if you thought it was a good idea to sell before, and now the market is higher, do you get back in, or do you wait for a big drop? And this is a very, very big problem for you. This is a very serious problem. And the reason it's a big problem is because now it has become an emotional decision, not a logical or mathematical decision. You have a problem that you're trying to figure out. When should you invest? When should you not invest? So I wrote in this email and I thought, hey, I spent this mental effort and time thinking about this and coming up with something I could write down. I thought I could share it on the show. So that's what I'm going to kind of go into now. One of the first thoughts I have when a situation like this, when someone tells me about this, or other situations that maybe they have 50% of their portfolio in one stock. One of the things about fixing your portfolio that you really should think about first, you don't have to do it all or nothing. You don't have to go 100% back into the market. You don't have to sell 100% of the stock that you have. You can do it gradually and slowly over time. So allow yourself that flexibility. What time frame do you want to use? Depends on you. It depends on your comfort level. You might say, okay, you know what? I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm just going to fucking fix it. I can work with that. That's okay if you're okay with that. If you know the downsides, the possible things that could go wrong, because the upsides can be amazing. They might not be, but they could be. Or if you want to do it over an extended period of time, a year or 2 or 3, or part of it right away, and then a few percent per month, or 5% or 10% per calendar quarter. It doesn't matter, but allow yourself to do it gradually. Of course, if you really want to do it all or nothing, you can do that as well. But there's an endless number of choices and percentages and time frequency that you can do this over. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. The second thing is that if you're going to start changing your portfolio and unfucking your portfolio or fixing it or whatever you want to call it, where are you going to? What is your portfolio eventually going to look like? You need to know where you're going before you start driving there. So sit down with a spreadsheet, Excel or Google Sheets or whatever the fuck Apple uses. I think they use Excel now. Figure out your plan. What is the right plan for you? There's books on that, of course. There's podcast episodes on that to get kind of more gritty, granular detail of what I currently like or recommend. You can go check out some of my recent shows. I would suggest episode 351 through 356, where I laid out the entire Polaris plan in 6 different shows. Maybe more detail than you can use, but you'll get the idea. Also in show 35, what show was this? It was 35. It was just recently. International Stock 369. That's why I couldn't do it. 369, where I talked about breaking up international. If you have a larger portfolio, maybe 500,000 or bigger, bigger, of course, being better. Not just because it's bigger, which is true, but because it's easier to do these adjustments in a bigger portfolio. And the bonus episode 369.5, which I did for patrons only, which I will cover here publicly for free in probably a month or 2. But you don't have to do it exactly like I suggest. And of course, the caveat, none of this is personalized investment advice. The ideas are there for you to think about. How does that apply to you? It's a framework. It's suggestions. Look at it, think hard, and make your own plan. And things that are, the most critical in the plan, thinking about you and your fear of volatility and losing money because you did sell when you weren't supposed to. How much do you need in bonds? You can be really aggressive. My parents, before they died at the age of 81, had 90% of all of their investments in stock at the time they passed away at 81. Now, part of the reason they could do that is they had nice pensions, they had Social Security, they lived very modestly, and probably only used like 2 or 3% of their portfolio per year. And they had this burning desire, particularly my dad, because he was born in 1930 and was a Depression baby, that he wanted to leave as much money as possible to me and my brothers. And yes, that's very fucking cool. I really wish they would have spent more of it. But, in the long run, I am the benefactor of that. So, what are your goals? What are your desires? For most people, 30% in bonds might do it. The right number for you might be 20%. The right number for you might be 50%. Think about that. How I calculate the cushion. So I don't really want you to say, oh, Phil said 40% in bonds, that's what I should have. However, if that's where your mind is at and that's the amount of effort you want to put into it and you don't want to think harder, that's a pretty good place to start, honestly, 40% in bonds. But to calculate how long the bonds could last you, as an example, with $1 million portfolio, The bonds and the stocks all pay dividends. Not every single stock, but all of the index funds that I use, of course, will pay dividends. If that's 2% of that million, that's 20 grand a year. If you're taking out 40 grand a year and your goal is to take out 4%, you have half of that money covered every year from dividends, whether the bonds or stocks go up or down. Stocks will eventually reduce their dividends if the economy is soft, but there is a big lag in that, and often the adjustments are small or only some companies, and I've covered that in detail in previous episodes. So you're going to get 20,000. If you need 40,000, you have to sell 20,000 of something, i.e. the bonds. So if you had 200,000 in bonds, you could sell $20,000 of bonds per year for 10 years. And your cushion would last 10 years, but it wouldn't, because keep in mind, as the bonds shrink as part of your portfolio, the amount of bond dividends you get will also shrink. So that number in this theoretical scenario was 20% bonds might not be enough for you. So if it's 40%, you can do that for 10, 15, 20 years. But it's all about the cash flow. It's all about what you need to spend. If you have the ability with a pension or rental property income or some farmland that you rent out, or, I don't know, an oil well that you hopefully own, pensions, profit sharing, Social Security, if all those other sources of income are sufficient that in a really bad stock market year, you could tighten your belt and live on 30 or 40 grand instead of the normal 60 or 70 grand, you can keep that in mind. You can adjust for that. So think about what your plan should be. How much bonds versus stocks? What type of stocks? What types of index funds? What type of bond index funds? What type of international index funds? And design a plan. Now that may take you hours. And that's okay. You're talking about your whole fucking financial life going forward. Have a plan, for freak's sake. Now, you make the plan, and that plan is without regard to the tax consequences of getting to that plan, how complicated, how much you have to sell, what fees you might have to pay, what penalties you might have to have. This is just the theoretical fancy ideal of what you think your plan should be. Make sure it's in writing. Print it out even if you have to. Post it on the wall if you need to. Once you have your plan, your ideal plan of where you should be today and or where you should be in the near future, now you know where you're going. And that's fantastic. And that's not based on your gut feeling of today or tomorrow. It should be kind of a long-term view of how the markets work in general. And once you have that plan printed out and taped to the wall, tacked to the wall, nailed gun to the wall, whatever you got to do, now you got to figure out how do you get there. And so you look at where you are now, and now you know where you're going to be, and you can create a outline, a plan, a roadmap, whatever you want to call it, of how to get to where you're going. And it might be that you're going to just fucking do it. And you sell whatever you've got to sell, you pay whatever transaction costs, you create whatever tax penalties you have to do, and you just snap it into the plan because that's the right plan for you. You've already figured that out, and you're done. However, if you sold and you have now 80 or 90% of your money in bonds, do you want to buy 100% stock? Because in your head, you might realize that what if next year it goes down 20%? So you missed the upside, you bought in at the peak, and you get fucked again. Okay, if that worries you, and it worries a lot of people, it's something I try to avoid, but of course, by first not fucking up the portfolio, but that's okay. You owned it, you fucked it up, and you made a plan, you made a map where you're going to go to, and now you've got to figure out how to get there. So, it doesn't really matter the plan you make to get there. You just have to make it. You make it and follow it. So, it could be that you're going to do a 5% adjustment every calendar quarter. And in that case, that 5% adjustment might need 20 adjustments, which could take several years. And you might say, oh, okay, well, that's too long. Let me do 5% every month. Whatever makes you happy. If you want it to be 10% or 20% every quarter, then in a year and 3 months, you'll be on the plan. And the nice thing about the plan, especially if you're going from too conservative to more aggressive, if you do this gradually over time, theoretically, you're losing money. Most years, the calendar most calendar years, the market goes up. So statistically, you're losing money by going in slower. But that's okay. That has value as well, as dollar cost averaging idea, because you can put in the money in 1 month, then the next month, then the next month. Let's say you're doing 5% a month for this theoretical. And we're not doing 5% of the $1 million portfolio. We're doing 5% of the adjustment. So if you are 80% in bonds and you want to be 40% in bonds, you're going to move 40% of your total portfolio. So 5% of that is just a 2% adjustment, for fuck's sake. You're just going to adjust 2% in a month. If 3 or 4 months from now, well, okay, let's say 5 months from now, the market falls by half. It's all cool. You only put in 2% per month, or adjusted 2% of your total portfolio per month. You only adjusted 10%, and you can convince yourself, and you could say out loud to your family and friends, I kind of had a feeling the market was going to go down. That's why I've only adjusted by 10%, waiting for this big drop. If the market goes up, you could say out loud or convince yourself, I kind of had a feeling the market was going to go up. That's why I started moving. I've already put 10% in stocks. So you have a psychological defense. You can win psychologically whether the market goes up or down. You can create additional rules once you've set, here's how much I'm going to do per month or per quarter. First of all, you should automate that. It doesn't have to be that your brokerage firm does it automatically, but that you have a certain date and you put it on your calendar on the wall or on your phone or use an app and you set an alarm. When that alarm goes off, you go to your computer and you do what you said you were going to fucking do. You just do it. You can have additional rules. The more complicated it gets, the harder it might be for you to follow. So be cautious with this. But you might say, if the market's gone up more than 15% in the last 3 months, pause for a month or two. Not really in love with that idea. The one that I like even better that could help you get into the market is say, okay, I'm doing 2% gross of my portfolio every month. If the market falls by 10% or more, I'll increase it to 3%. If it falls by 20% or more, I'm going to increase it to 5%. If it falls 30% or more, I'm going to move 10 or 15% over right then. And so you can do the dollar cost averaging and try to take advantage of those dips. But the idea of investing nothing and waiting for a dip, you can lose a lot of money on the upside because the market might go up 30% one year, 20% the next year, and then it falls 20%. And you think, woohoo, I finally waited for a couple of years and I got this big dip. But the problem is you would have been way money ahead having gotten in earlier. And even after the dip affected you, you would be ahead of being in bonds all that time. The problem is we don't know. So embrace that fact. It's okay to say, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. What I do know is most years the market goes up. What I do know is what my portfolio will pay out in dividends. Is all of that's accessible. You can go online. I use Vanguard index funds almost exclusively, but any funds that you have or you want to keep because it's in a taxable account. And let's say, for example, you have the Fidelity Large Cap Growth Fund, a nice index fund from Fidelity. You don't have to sell that to buy the Vanguard Large Cap Growth Fund. They're really close. The Vanguard one is a little better, but you don't have to make that big change. And so you can calculate what your dividends are going to be. You can make that roadmap. So the 3 parts, I guess, to summarize: 1, accept that you can do it in stages. It's not all or nothing. Whatever is wrong with your portfolio, whatever you think needs adjusting, you can do it in pieces if you want to. The second thing is make a plan, make a map, put something on paper, print that fucking paper out, spreadsheet, however you made it, so that you can look at it. Your spouse can look at it. Your family can look at it if you're okay with that. Maybe you're not. But know where you're going and then create a plan to get there. And you've got to fucking stick to that plan, that method of how you're going to get there. That's the most important thing is actually doing what you said you're going to do, because you said you were going to do it for a reason, because you wanted to get somewhere and you know where that somewhere is. If you just have this idea that, okay, over the next 2 years, I'm going to gradually move towards more stock, what the fuck is that? What are you going to move towards? And you're going to forget it, and you're going to put it off, and you're going to trick yourself, because in 3 months when the market's up 6%, you're going to say, but it's up, so I don't want to do it now. No. You have to have a destination printed out, written down somewhere. And then you have to have a strategy for how to get there. You have to have a roadmap, I guess, to drive you to where you're going. And you can't do that part until you know where you're going. So allow yourself to do it in any size chunks that you want. It can be all or nothing, or it can be 3 months, 3 years, doesn't matter. Make a plan where you're going to, and make a plan how you're going to get there and what the rules for that are. And then when one of those rules is triggered, you do what you decided to do months earlier. You had a fucking reason for the plan. Stick to it. Of course, always keeping in mind that this is a long-term process. Investing, I mean, not necessarily your plan. If you get 60-70% of the way in and the market falls by 40%, it can feel quite devastating, and you know that it might really fuck with you because you panicked last time. Keep in mind that you're a long-term investor. Even if you're 65 and you're getting Medicare, odds are you're going to live 15, 20 years or more. And even then, you might your spouse might outlive you. And even then, the money might go to your kids. So you don't have to be all out of the stock market. You also don't have to be all into the stock market. So I hope that helps somebody. And if it did, let me know. What are we going to call this? How to unfuck your portfolio. How's that? So if that helped you, I would love to hear about it. If you share this show with a friend, you can let me know. Of course, you can always go to iTunes or Patreon, and at iTunes, you give a 5-star review. At Patreon, you could become a patron. And that wraps up how to unfuck your portfolio. The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Your investments should be based on your situation, and you should consult with your financial advisor before taking any action. The show may contain ads. These ads are placed into the show by the hosting company after I finish recording and editing. I have little control over the content of the ads, and you should not assume that I support their products or claims. If you choose to support the show via the new Patreon page, that support does not create an advisor-client relationship. All right, everybody, back into the more fun parts. We've got an interview today. It's Drew from Genetically Modified Skeptic. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Really happy to be here. We've gotten to, in the pre-COVID times, hang out a bit at conferences like American Atheists, and I'm glad to have gotten the chance to be on the show.
Well, you're very kind. I understand they're doing an online conference this year, so I'm hoping to get the details soon and promote the shit out of that, so we can all at least be in the same stream at the same time, even if not in person.
Yeah, it's quite a conundrum because they're supposed to be providing community in a way which we can't find elsewhere, and American Atheists has been excellent at doing that for so long. So I'm interested to see what avenue they take to making that happen virtually.
As you know, because we had pre-show. I never save any of that, by the way, just in case you. I was surprised to find out that you knew so much about the stock market and wanted to talk about it.
Also in the pre-show, you told me I could swear, so fuck off, Bill.
Fair enough. Appropriate usage. It reminds me that, you are a couple of years younger than me, but it popped in my head the first time my son flipped me off. Friends around were like, "Are you going to let him do that?" And I said, "He did it correctly." What? Because I was being a bit of a dad dick at the moment, and he flipped me off. And I was like, "No, that was fair. I earned it." You talk about atheism, secularism, humanism, all kinds of fun stuff. And I, of course, did watch a handful of videos just to kind of get up to speed. But some of your recent stuff, I really do have a serious problem.
All right. What do we have here?
So I'm watching your video on my phone, and I realize, A, your camera is way better than my camera. and even after the adjustments for the camera, it's still not nice. But then I went to watch videos on my monitor, and I realized that the resolution on my phone is wildly better than on my computer monitor. And even though they're only a year old, I'm now tempted to buy new ones because I'm missing out on all the detail, because your videos, unless I'm delusional, are really high res now.
They are now.
Yeah, I understand.
They weren't always. I actually started just on my iPhone 6.
Yeah.
And essentially that was because I saw that Cosmic Skeptic, who was my favorite atheist YouTuber before I was a YouTuber at all, started on his iPhone 5, I believe.
Yeah.
And just over time with Patreon, with AdSense, I've been able to invest more into the channel. So I still have a relatively basic setup, but I also have a dedicated room in my house for my studio. So it's mostly lighting, I'll say.
Well, then after the show, maybe you can send me lighting tips, because I want to step up my game, even though most of the time it's purely audio. I do occasionally talk to people, and the only trick I've got right now is that I've got foam on the wall behind me as a visual prop, because they think, wow, he's in a studio.
Yeah, no, I've used the same thing for live streams. Trust me, it definitely does seem like a bit more of a credible host when they have some phone back there. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and even though behind me it does very little, but it's kind of cute. How did you get started in videos at all? I ask as if I didn't watch your most popular video ever about, well, not most popular, but how you got into it, but for the listeners.
Yeah. So I became an atheist in early 2016, and coming from a independent fundamental Baptist background and family, I really didn't have an outlet for any of my thoughts, and I'm someone who feels the need to express themselves in writing, in debate, in arguments. I need to be able to verbally express myself in some way. I always liked writing, and I knew a little bit about editing because I used to make skating videos when I was 16.
Nice.
So in watching Cosmic Skeptic, and also it was then the Bible Reloaded, now Hannah and Jake, and it inspired me to just start saying things that I felt I needed to say but wouldn't be welcomed if I were to voice them in my own personal life to friends and family. A lot of that had to do with venting about alternative medicine, discussing my story of becoming an atheist, because no one I knew in person would ever want to hear that.
Yeah.
Eventually,
go ahead.
It got larger than I ever expected. I didn't really set out to have a platform. I just wanted to express what I was thinking about certain things. If I changed some minds, that was fine. Really, my main goals were expressing myself and hopefully normalizing some of the thoughts, some of the ideas that I was putting out there. Now, Hemant Mehta ended up sharing one of my videos rather early on. I think maybe it was my 4th or 5th video, and that got me something like 1,000 subscribers within a week. And
nice.
That was just unthinkable for me. It was incredible, and I was so grateful to him for that.
Yeah, he is a force, I'll tell you that.
Absolutely. I just wanted to keep going, and in learning more about video production, learning more about writing scripts, learning more about speaking to a camera, more about the community and what I felt needed to be said, I just kept building on the knowledge that I started with until eventually now I have slightly more high-res videos that are a bit longer, a bit better scripted, a bit better fact-checked, I think. And it's really never been about having a large platform or being, I detest the term influencer. It's been about trying to normalize the thoughts that I have, trying to normalize things that not just myself, but millions of other people are going through in deconversion, deconstructing faith, and being skeptical of alternative medicine, being skeptical of conspiracy theories, having a kind of moral evolution while still trying to maintain relationships. There's a lot of people going through this stuff. So if I can be just some voice to that, then
Right.
I'll happily be that.
Yeah, it's a weird place to be the first time you find out you helped somebody else get involved and do something.
Right. And I think for me that came relatively shortly after the Hemant Mehta share, which was incredible for me personally because Hemant Mehta himself and his Atheist Voice videos
Yeah.
were the very first atheist videos I ever saw. I mean, the day that I first realized atheist might be the right word for me, no one, not even my own wife, knew that I wasn't Christian at that point.
Yeah.
I was told that all atheists were horrible, were angry, hateful, bitter, just awful people. And so I remember Googling something like friendly atheists to see if they existed just out of desperation.
Right.
And funnily enough, I did find Hemant's work from there, realized that he was quite a friendly atheist. He lived up to the name, and his videos just voicing an atheist perspective while remaining calm and rational and most of all friendly made me feel not only validated but in a way empowered. And so when I first had someone reach out to me, actually from Germany, strangely enough, to say that they were raised fundamentalist and that my few videos I put out at that point had helped them, it just brought tears to my eyes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's happened, enough times since then to make me realize that if I keep going with this, that's going to keep happening. And I think it needs to keep happening. People do need to hear this stuff. They do need to be helped by this content. I needed it. And
you had
people
said
are going to continue to have these problems and these, I guess, existential
dread
issues and dread. Yes, that can only be alleviated by, I think,
you
camaraderie.
mentioned one of the videos about you were at a point where you thought maybe you'd just stop, not that far into the process. What was going on then?
I was entirely in the closet. The only people that knew I was an atheist were my wife and my parents at the time when I started my channel, up until I had about 25,000 subscribers.
Okay.
That was nearly a year-long period, or about a year, almost exactly. It was not a comfortable process to make these videos that I was so passionate about, never be able to tell people what I was doing with all my time, just making up lies about how I was spending my time. But also, anytime someone would come over, I would have to tear down my whole set, my whole studio that I'd set up for videos, and hide it in the closet.
That's in the closet. You were living in the closet, yes.
Right, exactly. It was a perfect visual representation of what was happening to me internally. And it just felt like living a double life. That was not comfortable, and maybe more importantly, it was quite damaging to my relationships with the people who did know, because my wife and my parents had to cover up the lie, the big lie that I was presenting to everybody. They had to help convince everyone that I was still Christian, because they knew that if others found out, then I would just be bombarded by, not, let's call it Christian love, right?
Yeah.
That means everything from being given ultimatums to just kind of being irritated by all the, hi, how are you today? With the understanding that that's not really the point of the conversation. So it was incredibly stressful and damaging to my relationships to have my channel going while being in the closet as much as I was. But at the same time, because of what we were just saying, because of the people contacting me and telling me that my videos made them feel sane in the insane place that they felt they lived, I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
It felt wrong. It felt like being just intimidated into silence by Christian fundamentalism. And that was the exact force in this country that I was trying to counter with my videos.
Excellent. Excellent. And I notice quite a few of your videos, you talk about Carl Sagan.
I do, especially more recently, yeah.
And it was one of those weird things. I actually was able to watch the very first Cosmos in real time each week as it was released and put on PBS. And I did that on a 13-inch black and white TV in the master bedroom of my parents' house, because they were watching like Love Boat and Fantasy Island.
Priorities, right?
Yeah,
priorities.
they were watching it on the much bigger 19-inch black and white TV. So yeah, we were very late to get a color television. I think I bought my first color television 1 year after my parents bought their first color television.
And all your investment decisions since have been to ensure your security of color television, right?
Yeah, it's funny that you kind of accidentally at least got close to one of the things that makes me tick, and I know this is all about you, forgive me, it wasn't really my goal to learn everything about investing to become wealthy, although that's a nice perk, right? But the goal was to not be fucking poor.
Exactly.
Because I've seen that. And people, rationing their food and cutting their pills in half and living in a trailer under the power lines. These kinds of people actually do exist in my family. And I've seen that. And I was like, oh, how do I not end up there? But anyway.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I understand it as a security question more than just a wealth question, an opulence question.
So why is Carl Sagan more prevalent in your videos thought process now than before?
That's a good question. It may just be because I've been reading a lot more Carl Sagan. I started reading a lot more Carl Sagan in 2020 just because I started reading more.
Yeah.
I think I went through 3 or 4 books a month in 2020.
Yeah.
Because of just not having other things to do. And honestly, I'm glad that I did start that because I felt that it increased the quality of my videos and the subjects I was able to present. My first video in 2020 about Carl Sagan was how Carl Sagan predicted 2020, or predicted in quotes, in 1995, because people were sharing this excerpt from Demon Haunted World Chapter 2 along with the insinuation that Carl Sagan saw 2020 coming, that he had predicted the state of America, that he was, a scientific Nostradamus, all of that. And so I decided to, while giving credit where it was due, there were a lot of insights within that excerpt that were being shared as prophetic. I also wanted to demystify the whole thing. When read in context, as I did just incidentally in 2020, you realize that prediction, that idea that he wrote that was being lauded as prophetic, was just a result of his concern over factors that he saw in our political atmosphere of the mid-90s.
And for those who have not yet seen that video, what is that idea that he professed?
The idea is basically that America or Americans will progressively shy away from education, from learning more, from bettering ourselves through our education, and instead latch on to the siren song of pseudoscience is the alliteration that he uses.
Yeah.
Basically, because of our own fear, because of political instability, because of financial instability, we will reach for a shortcut to existential security, or an illusion of existential security, in consulting horoscopes, in being all about astrology, in falling into political extremism and conspiracy theories, instead of investing in ourselves and preparing for our future by means which may be more difficult, maybe a larger time investment or energy investment now, but will ultimately actually pay off, rather than have us falling into the hands of whatever political or religious charlatan that comes along.
Yeah, I think that's very either you've put a better spin on it, or I'm thinking of another Carl Sagan idea that's very similar, is the idea that as our technology advances, we can get to a point where it's so advanced and we enjoy so much from it that a generous, if not large part of the population lacks the ability to actually understand the technology that they're using, and that's dangerous.
Exactly, and I'm glad you expressed that, because that's the other half of that excerpt from Demon Haunted World that I'm referring to in that video.
Excellent.
Where, as he would say, we live in a society that is dominated by science and technology, wherein no one understands science and technology.
Yeah.
And I think that his phrase that he liked to use, see if I can remember it, this explosive mix of power and ignorance is, or this combustible mix of power and ignorance is soon to blow up in our faces, something along those lines. And as we can see by what happened across social media, especially in 2020, I think he was right.
Yeah. Well, one of his other books that I read as a kid or a teenager, I guess, I think it's called The Cold and the Dark, where with some other authors, they wrote about what would be the long-term results, short-term and long-term results of a global nuclear war, and how we would survive, but how conditions would be, and how the smoke and debris from all of the fires would blot out the sun and cause, a sudden drop in temperature, like something like Krakatoa did for a year. And I read that book and was just thinking to myself, oh my God, it could kind of all go away because someone's stupid. And that is kind of part of the world we live in, I guess.
We realize how vulnerable we are to ourselves.
Yeah.
Once we actually understand the scope of our technology.
I'm probably also going to have to go and download a song, because I don't have this in my repertoire. It's a video from 3 years ago, but it's your number one most watched video. Some moron wrote a cute little ditty about evolution. I don't know if you remember that from 3 years ago, but
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can riff on that one a little bit.
Please
that
do.
Was a fun video. So I was scrolling through Facebook one day about 3 years ago, late 2017, I want to say. And I found this probably from one of my family members sharing it. I don't know, something shameful like that. I found this video that had about 250,000 views of this, the lead of this Christian ministry named David Reeves, singing a song that was kind of a country folk style about how creationism was obviously true and evolution was this ridiculous, childish fairy tale. Obviously, the entire song was just a caricature of evolution, assigning evolution some kind of mindful agency with final goals, and animals giving birth to completely different types of animals, thinking that humankind came about by being originally a fish and then a bird and then a monkey.
Yeah. And
all just a ridiculous caricature of evolution, right?
And if I may interject, I would dispute caricature, because a caricature overemphasizes things that really exist. This was just fraud. This is just deceit.
You
and
have
lies.
me on that one. That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm not supposed to correct the guests like that, but they popped into my head.
No, absolutely. So I didn't think that this video was really going to be a big deal, honestly. I just thought
that's how it works, man. When you just do something for fun, it hits.
So many people had seen that video, and I don't think my channel even had 250,000 total views at the time, and that video on Facebook had more than that. So I thought it was a risk in making this video titled something along the lines of "This guy thinks his Christian song debunks evolution," something
like that, word for word.
I decided to respond to it and just go not line by line, but by idea, and correct what he had gotten wrong, and then also discuss why creationists tend to make all of these, I was going to use the word caricature again, but why they would misrepresent evolution so thoroughly. And I just discussed that. And then before YouTube, my creative project was music. I play a few different instruments, and I sang a little bit in like an alternative rock type band, and just at college, just for fun. And So I decided to come up with my own version of his song, just set to the same tune as the chorus of his.
Right.
And I think that my first line was, "This song about creation is theological masturbation." That's the main thing that I remember about it. Now knowing what I know, I should have seen that video's popularity coming, but I was just trying to have fun at the time and hopefully correct some misinformation. I never expected it to get larger than that video. The funny thing is that at the point where it started to really grow, and it was my first video ever to 100,000 views, and none of my other videos were even close to that at the time.
Right.
The David Reeves Ministries actually copyright strike the video and got it deleted for a while.
Yeah.
I actually called the ministry and tried to speak with them, and they ended up just saying they realized who I was and said that I can't use their copyrighted videos, and hung up. Well, obviously they didn't understand fair use because I was able to get the video reinstated. However, upon getting it reinstated, I did get a letter from their lawyer threatening legal action against me. And basically my response was, okay, fuck you. What you're doing is illegal. And what you're trying to do is censor my voice so that I can't correct any of your ridiculous misrepresentations of anyone that's different than you, or anyone who believes anything different than you. If your ideas only thrive in just a complete echo chamber, then I'm going to poke a hole in that echo chamber and let it all out, and it's going to be your fault, not mine. So now the video's at over 1 million. I'm happy about that. Ultimately, I'm just really glad that David Reeves Ministries wasn't able to silence me, and that it feels like to me their whole song, publishing that, backfired on them, and I'm all right with that.
Very nice. I was waiting to see if you found out that they ripped off an older song and could get them for copyright infringements of somebody else's musical writings.
I mean, if there was a copyright system for ripping off theological ideas from from the 1920s in the Scopes monkey trial, then they would certainly have a lawsuit on their hands. Unfortunately, that's not how it works.
But it is a good episode, and I had great fun watching it and your reaction. So, classic response video. So I'm not too surprised, but of course it's easy to see what is a success after it becomes a success.
Right.
Another favorite I've seen, I think a couple videos, you've done some medical kind of alternate therapies, but also specifically essential oils. What's going on there?
Yeah. So my journey into, or I should say away from religious dogmatism and into secularism was really catalyzed by the fact that my family is into selling essential oils, and they very much were at that time. The long and short of it is that I realized that a lot of people that I knew, that I was close to, that I love, were basing kind of some really serious, wild, and potentially life-altering ideas of theirs on their personal experiences with essential oils. Using a certain essential oil and thinking that it helped them with such and such ailment, and now touting the claim that, well, essential oils cure cancer and the FDA doesn't want you to know. I realized that personal experience was something that, if relied upon without adequate controls, could really get you into trouble with your health, trouble with your relationships. And I realized that, well, one of the main reasons I believe in Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior is because I have just dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of deep spiritual personal experiences with Jesus Christ, or what I call Jesus Christ. However, there were no controls on those experiences. It was not something that it was not a result that could be replicated under scientific conditions. If you're trying to actually discover scientifically whether or not Jesus was involved in any of my personal experiences, it just couldn't be done. And in fact, many other people of many other religions had experiences that were just as deep as mine, just as meaningful and convincing as mine.
Right.
Yet they believed in a God and in a religion that completely contradicted my own. So you could say that essential oils, while not necessarily making me an atheist, definitely were a catalyst toward my atheism. Now, because of really the same motivators that would have me talk about why I think religious fundamentalism can be so detrimental to people, I talk about how essential oils and belief in essential oils, unfettered belief in alternative medicine, can be damaging to people as well. Often it's easier to get that point across, actually, because the harm is not always psychological, but often physical. I think people are more able to see that. Basically, essential oils are not a cure-all. There are several multi-level marketing companies like Young Living Essential Oils and doTERRA Essential Oils who push them as, well, they don't legally push them as cure-alls, but they're distributors who they are able to hide behind legally, since they don't represent the company, do tout these things as cures. They are a cure for cancer. They are a cure for Alzheimer's, diabetes, autism. They've said Ebola, COVID, anything that the American public happens to be frightened of at this moment can be alleviated by essential oils. Well, even political unrest. Look that one up. It's hilarious.
I'm sure on their packaging, it's a little more crafty in the wording, and saying things not approved by the FDA.
Right.
This is not a medicine, but it relieves the symptoms of social injustice or something. It doesn't cure it, but it fixes it.
They do have to make legal disclaimers. They can't claim that these things cure any disease, of course, in public or at their conventions. However, they are allowed to aid in the publishing of literature which specifically touts their products as cures to whatever disease they want. So they do that. They're also allowed to encourage their distributors to talk about their own experiences with these essential oils curing something. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard, I was diagnosed with cancer, went to chemo, but then I started using essential oils and my cancer went into remission.
Praise the oil.
Completely forget about the actual medical science involved with that. Completely just chalk it up to essential oils. Really reminiscent of, I went through chemo and I prayed really hard and my cancer went away. Thanks God.
It's a thing that I notice. I think our country in general is moving away from religion, and I don't remember who I heard say it first, but when someone says you get cured from cancer, what did you replace it with? Well, nothing. I just not religious. But however, there are a lot of people who still feel like or act like or think like they need something to hang on to, and it can be essential oils, it can be homeopathy, which is probably the only difference is the homeopathic products often don't smell. Astrology, Wiccan. I'm going to get all kinds of hate mail now. But all these other things or today's big topic, QAnon. And from the outside, you look at the stuff and you're like, how? But it doesn't happen like the snap of the fingers. You kind of get drawn in slowly, like when you're a child and they tell you, okay, sure, Timmy, Santa's not real, but Jesus is. And it's just kind of a life experience, I guess.
Right. Bringing it back to Carl Sagan, we buy into these things because they promise us some kind of feeling or illusion of existential security.
Yeah. It must provide something, otherwise people wouldn't do it.
Right. I do think that the need there is completely valid. We all have that. And I think that's why when dealing with people who I would call victims of these types of schemes, I try not to direct any frustration or negativity toward the people that are actually involved in these things. If I'm going to direct any kind of frustration or negativity toward anyone, it's going to be probably people like televangelists, leaders who are roping people into these schemes. But the people that are at the bottom of the pyramid, so to speak, I'm going to treat them as victims. I'm going to talk about the ideology and how it's victimized them, not talk about how they're stupid, how they are, just complete morons and lack all critical thinking skills. They may need to realize that they have made massive lapses in judgment, and some of it might be their fault. Yeah. However, I've been there myself. Most of us have been there ourselves. And so I'm going to extend them as much empathy as I possibly can, realizing that it's really just the function of a healthy human mind looking for some kind of existential security in a society where that's not particularly well provided to everyone, and in fact very unequally provided to people.
Fair enough. Of course, again, everyone, the listeners, this is Drew with Genetically Modified Skeptic, and of course they can always go to your Patreon page, patreon.com/genetically modified skeptic, and donate a big pile of money there. Do you have the tip thing turned on YouTube?
So the tip thing turned on as in channel memberships?
I guess I don't know. I've seen a couple people now where if I watch their YouTube videos, underneath there's a little button that says contribute or tip or something like that, and you can click on it. I gave $5 to one of my Italian tutors or people that I follow for Italian. So it seems like it's new to me, so I just didn't know if you knew about it.
I think it's a relatively new feature that you're talking about, right? I think it is the channel memberships. This is my career, full-time YouTuber, so I should hopefully know what I'm talking about here. But
I didn't mean to catch you off guard there.
No, you're fine. I think that is channel memberships. I don't have that turned on right now. I will say I've always been rather hesitant to plug ways that people can financially support me because at the end of the day, I am doing this because I think these things need to be said, not because it's a way for me to make money, which may be why I put out a lot more videos a lot faster when I first started because I had more things to say, and now I'll put them out a little bit slower and they'll be a bit more long form and thought out. I say things when I feel that I need to say them, not for any other reason, and that's also why I don't have merchandise quite yet. However, people have asked me for it.
Yeah,
maybe I should give up the shame of making money for what I do.
So it's one of those things, and I'm delighted that you expressed it that way. The recognition, the humbleness of it all, and I can roll with that. But then at the same time, I'm going to tell everybody to go to Patreon and give you money.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know whether or not you have a problem with plugging yourself, but I hear that Phil Ferguson also has a Patreon that you could just as easily go and donate a bunch of money to. My
listeners are acutely aware of that, but thank you. It's one of those things that very early on, I've been doing podcasting 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And before that, I had a blog for 5 years. And after 5 years of 1 to 3 stories a day, I rose to the level of insignificance. But one of the very, very, very first articles, so this is probably 10 or 12 years ago, I talked about how Christians allegedly give 10%, and they don't generally anywhere close to that. But if we gave some fraction of that, 1 or 2 or 5% of what we made to people who are out there so that more people can have voices, because I want a world that when someone says, hey, I want to learn about essential oils, they get your video. When someone says Christianity and evolution, they get your video. Right. And all those other topics, not the crazies. And unfortunately, there's so many crazies, and they are much better at getting money. So that's kind of my psychology. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to go over? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's funny because sometimes you'll see smaller Christian channels, not to say that they are not similarly genuinely invested and passionate about the message they're giving.
Right.
It's just a matter of the infrastructure in the community. You'll see smaller Christian channels going 4K or having all of these really intense, beautiful cinematic shots and things. And it's simply because the community is there, the infrastructure is there for smaller Christian YouTube channels to make money faster than atheist YouTube channels. Now, I will also say atheist YouTube channels tend to draw more attention views-wise and probably make more on AdSense. largely because we actually have new things to say.
Yeah. Fair.
Not just the same stuff that you've heard 1,000 times. And so people might be a bit more interested in watching because of that. So there's a give and take to being either. So if you're deciding on if you want to be a Christian or atheist YouTuber, use this as a handy guide.
Yeah. If that's your guide, I don't know. Maybe I don't want to watch your videos. But once again, everybody, Genetically Modified Skeptic is the YouTube channel. Go check it out. We've talked about the Patreon already a couple times. And Drew, I do thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts, ideas, stories with the listeners of the Phil Ferguson Show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm extremely happy to be here, and I hope everyone enjoyed.
We do not accept that there is now or has ever been a holy person, and that includes everyone from Mother Teresa to Moses to Jesus Christ. We call him JC. Mohammed, his daughter Fatima, the angel Moroni, the Pope, any Pope, all of the popes, any oracles, self-appointed or appointed by other persons, or elected by strange men in long red dresses. We do not accept that there is any efficacy in prayer. And we don't care whether they're said by your legislator, George Bush, yourself, myself, a priest, a rabbi, a minister, a guru, or even your mama. Atheists see all of this, first, as being totally subjective and going on only in your little heads, nowhere else. And secondly, we see it basically as simply being silly. We don't hate you. We think you're quite odd. But these are all very ancient, outmoded fables, and we no longer need to cling to them in our modern world. The most difficult thing in the world to do is to live in it. Just to get along with other people, to earn a living, to meet our basic needs. And we do not need encumbered by all of these ideas which bring you a sense of guilt, a sense of inadequacy, of impotence. We need a decent, modern, sophisticated, workable set of standards by which we can get along with ourselves and others.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Once again, I hope you have enjoyed the show. I know I sure enjoyed making it. It's a delight for me to be able to talk to really smart people that do all kinds of really different things, and I thank them for doing that. If you like the show, there's a couple of ways you can show your appreciation. One is to go to iTunes, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, leave a 5-star review. So when people find my podcast and see that there's hundreds and maybe someday thousands of 5-star reviews, they might be tricked into thinking this show is worth listening. Hopefully I'm joking, but sometimes when people find a podcast and they go, oh, there's 2 reviews, there's a 1 and a 5, I'll look for something else. So you can help me that way. That would be greatly appreciated. You can share the show with a friend. Send them a link. Say, hey, you had questions about stock. You can listen to this episode. You had a question about international investing. Listen to this episode. And of course, you can always go to patreon.com/Phil and sign up there and leave a contribution. I did release a special patron only episode. It's 369.5. I didn't want to ruin the number sequence for normal listeners, because someone would go, where's this show? It's missing. So I'm pretty sure it's 369.5. And for anyone that listened to that, yes, I did have a mistake one time, I think, where I was describing some of my current thoughts on asset allocation. There was a place where I said 50%, and clearly it should have been 15%. At this point in time, it seems like all the people that have pointed it out to me have figured out that I misspoke that one time, so I hopefully did not cause anyone confusion. I will cover that subject matter and that content here in the normal podcast at some point in the future, but I thought it'd be a nice little perk for anyone who signs up as a patron. And of course, you can go right now to patreon.com/Phil and sign up for $1 or more per episode. And the nice thing is that because it's per episode, if I go 2 or 3 weeks without putting out a show, you're not out any money. The one other thing I wanted to go over, and this is kind of the heartbreaker for me because I don't really want to do this, but I feel like I'm compelled. At this time, Phil Ferguson, the Polaris Financial Planning, is not accepting new clients. My minimum had been $1 million for a while, and luckily for me and for the people that have contacted me, there are some people that have more than $1 million, and they kept hiring me. And I think I'm now at a point where I need to try to figure out how to be more efficient with my time, or try to figure out how to get things done faster. Or, you know what? Maybe I just don't. I don't know. So for right now, until at least, I think I said last time, give or take June 1st, I'm not going to be taking any new client. Well, I'll take almost no new clients. If someone calls me and says I have $10 million, maybe I take one new client. But I'm very full, and I want to make sure that I have enough time to provide quality service to the people who are already paying me. In a world where sometimes growth is above customer service, I don't want to fall into that trap. So just a reminder, right now, I am not taking new clients, and I will reevaluate that and give you updates if and when there are some, at least something before June 1st, because I've said I'm closed till then, and maybe I stay closed. That's funny. It's a weird word. I stay closed to new clients. Anyway, that's enough for the show. Again, longer than I expected, but that's all right. We're having fun, aren't we? Right? Hopefully you like the show. If you have any questions, comments, if you want a new investing 101 topic on a subject that you just never really understood and you'd like to, or you think people don't understand, or you just think it's a good idea and I should cover it, of course, you can send me an email, and that would be to phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. Once again, thank you for listening, and hopefully as the number of vaccinations goes up, we finally get to herd immunity, and some point in the future, maybe we can meet at a conference in person. Until then, ciao.
Oh my goodness. Becky, look at her Bible. It is so huge. She looks like one of those preacher guys' girlfriends. But who understands those preacher guys anyway? They only talk to her because she looks like Mother Teresa, okay? I mean, but look at it. It's just huge. It's gross. She just looks so righteous.
I like big Bibles and I cannot lie. You Christian brothers can't deny that when a girl walks in with a KJV and a bookmark in Proverbs, you get stoked. Got a name engraved so you know this girl is saved. It looks like one of those large ones with plenty of space in the margins. Oh baby, I wanna read with ya, cause your Bible's got pictures. My minister tried to console me, but that book you got makes
me so holy.
Ooh, mama mia, you say you want koinonia? Well, bless me, and teach me about John Wesley. I saw her praying while I was DJing. She got grace, pretty face. She ain't going down to the bad place. I'm tired of heathen guys saying they like pocket size. That's the average Christian to take a look. She gotta pack much book. So fellas, have your girlfriends got the book? Oh yeah. Well, read it. Read that holy book. Baby got NIV with the ribbon bookmark. NIV with the ribbon bookmark. Baby got NIV with the ribbon bookmark. NIV with the ribbon bookmark. I like 'em leather and bound. It's 50 pounds, I just can't understand how it is some weenie wants Bible on CD. She wanna get you saved. Amen, double up, amen. I ain't talking about a paraphrase, cause Paul wouldn't use those anyways. I like them real thick and red lettered. You can't find nothing better. Southpaws in love, Bibles that big are unheard of. So I'm sitting here thinking, what if I find me a girl that shows midriff? You can have those bimbos, I keep those chicks that do devos. A word to the Christian sisters, I can't resist ya. I do God's time with ya, but I gotta be straight when I say I wanna pray till the break of day. Baby got it going on, like the wife in Proverbs 31. We just might get engaged when we finish reading this page, cause it's worn and it's torn, and I know that girl's reborn. So ladies, ladies, do you wanna save people from Hades? Then read it till the pages fall out, even white preachers gotta shout. Baby got Thompson chain with the big red letters. Thompson chain with the big red letters. Baby got book. Yeah, baby. When it comes to a good book, Stephen King's resume just can't compare. 39 plus 27 equals 66 books. And if you're Catholic, there's even more. So your girlfriend quotes Bill Hybels, but does she got a big Bible? Cause that little thing she's got won't start a revival. My Bible study don't want none unless you got book, hun. You can read Clancy or Grisham, but please don't lose this book. Some brothers wanna play that hard role and tell you that book's too old, so they toss it and they burn it. But I pull up quick to just learn it. So your girl likes paperback. Well, I ain't down with that, cause my girlfriend's hot and her Bible's rockin', and she's got good doctrine. To the atheist chicks who try to diss, you ain't it, Miss Priss. Give me a Christian, I'm insisting, and I greet her with some holy kissing. Some pervert tried to chase, but he didn't make it past first base. She's quick to resist temptation, and she loves a new translation. So ladies who are lost and found, if you want the 666 thrown down, dial 1-800 reads a lot, and teach me about those Psalms. Baby got NIV with the ribbon bookmark. NIV with the ribbon bookmark. Baby got Thompson chain with the big red letters. Thompson chain with the big red letters. Bible cows knowledge, but you still got book. Bible cows knowledge, but you still got book. Bible cows knowledge, but you still got book. Bible cows knowledge, but you still got book.